Good morning, everyone. My name is Sri Kurde. I'm the head of global channel organization at Techwave. Techwave is a global organization spread across North America, Europe, Australia, India, and Middle East, headquartered in North America. We help our customers thrive in their digital journey. With that said, today I welcome you all to the CIO Roundtable. Today's topic is about containerization and microservices, how that is being taken over the industry today and helping the organizations take their digital journey. I have a distinguished panel here today who will be taking you through their journey and help you understand how this can be achieved in your own organizations. With that said, let me introduce the speakers and technology leaders here. Today, first person that I would like to introduce is Dr. Suresh Shan, Global Technology Leader at BFSI. And next is Ashish Chandra. He's the EVP, CDO, and CTO at TCS. Last but not the least is Biju Velayudan. He's the CIO at G. Kuppuswamy Naidu Memorial Hospital. Along with these three distinguished speakers, I would like to introduce our technology partner, IBM. And I'll introduce Vijay Anand, who is our IBM Cloud Platform India region head. And he is going to be moderating the discussion today. And I have with him Vibhuti Rath, Sales Engineering Leader at IBM, who will take the course of this discussion here. With that said, I'll turn it back to Vijay Anand. Thank you.
Thanks, Srinivas. Really privileged to be part of this roundtable. And good morning, everyone. And a warm welcome again to Mr. Biju, Dr. Suresh, as well as Mr. Ashish. Thanks for taking time to be part of this exciting session with us in the roundtable. And the topic itself is sort of a buzzword today. And a lot of organizations have started adopting cloud. A lot of organizations have adopted the digital transformation as well. But things were not the same. Few years back, there was a lot of hesitancy initially on the cloud adoption due to multiple reasons, concerns in the customer's mind. And second, in terms of the digital transformation, where every customer felt it is the need of the hour, but there were a lot of inhibitors, which was preventing them to go full blown into this journey. But in comes, unfortunately, the pandemic, and the byproduct of it is acceleration of adoption of cloud, as well as primarily the adoption of the digital journey of a lot of the clients. And without taking much of time, let me get into some of the interesting questions that we have, and really excited to hear the point of view from all the eminent panelists here. The first one which I have is few years ago when cloud changed the IT landscape for good, where it gave a lot of options for customers to quickly adopt, improve their agility, time to market, etc. There were a lot of great inventions and technology which was offered to customers at a very large scale. And containerization is definitely one of them. Mr. Biju, if you could share a quick perspective on the importance of containerized applications in today's age and how it is helping the organizations stay agile.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Vijay, for a nice question what you have posted on. Containerization is a buzzword today, but that's a word which has been in the industry for a long time because I have been working with Solaris for quite some time. And last 2 decades, I'm hearing about what containers is. But after the cloud has come in, this has got a new name and fame, and containers has become so famous in the industry. Okay, why we need containers is as simple as that. Containers is nothing very new. It is something like a VMware, but it is specific onto that, so that whenever you do a faster deployment, okay, so this will be very helpful because I'm basically a healthcare person, which I spend most of my time in healthcare and IT, probably for last 2.5 decades. And in the healthcare, we want everything swift. So the importance of the deployment is very, very fast. It should be very faster in the healthcare industry, because whenever we talk about the mission critical applications, we speak about banking applications, or if we call it as, any other industrial application, if that fails, we will be losing so much of money. But in the healthcare, if you lose the data, it is not the money, it is matter of life. So we are always working between the life and death, and even the data which passes from one place to another makes a lot of difference. So we want a lot of high critical applications to be rolled out at a very short span of time. So containerization, as everybody knows, this is nothing but packaging of a software and sending it across to one place. And this is very important for the place where you have multiple locations, for example, if you have multiple hospitals in the country or across the country and so on and so forth, this will be very useful, because what happens is when you develop a software in a place and before deploying, you make it as a package and put it into a container and throw it off. It works from anywhere. And this is a very, very important criteria, because I know that how difficult it is that you just develop a software in one environment and putting into another environment, it doesn't work at all. So it's very, very important to always package and throw it to another place. It is nothing but containerization, and definitely in the world of, it is an agile world, you want everything moving forward in a very faster pace. So this is very, very important. In our hospital, we have developed the electronic medical records, and we are one of the forerunners in the country. In our hospital, when you just walk in today, no doctors are seeing a patient or consulting the patient with a paper and pen. They always take a iPad to do that, and we have also starting the patient engagement and patient outcomes development. A lot of research is also going on to that. So whenever you need a development release cycle in a very, very faster pace, containerization is one of the best way of doing it. And also to add on to that, there are some places that group of applications can be shared with common configurations. Making a configuration is the toughest thing, because whenever you are putting a new application to a new place, you have to go back to the operating system and do a lot of changes so that it gets adopted to that. So all these problems are just solved by using a container. And also when the applications to be deployed for a group of people, this is much more easier, so that you can just put it across. You don't want to you don't want to bother about the library files, configuration files, which is critical for the application, and it will be automatically taken care. All these things are taken care, and there is not much of dependencies at all. So saying this, definitely containerization is a one which is coming up in a very big way. I'm sure that, as Vijayanand told, many people have not adopted as of now, because many people doesn't know what is the real benefit out of it in a different environment. Everybody thinks that it is something like another virtual machine. Okay, and besides this, we are not knowing how much we are paying for the licensing fees, right? So whenever you want to have a VMware, so if you have some multiple servers, for every server you have to pay for the OS. But when you make it as a containerization, okay, you are just paying for one operating system, whereas every container sits, it works as an individual server, but container does not need so much of licenses and so on. You have a lot of benefits to go on, Vijay, and this is few of the things which came into my mind. Thank you.
I think thanks, Mr. Biju. I think you really articulated well in terms of how containerization plays a significant part in a healthcare industry, primarily on the agility as well as on the optimization, both in terms of cost as well as in terms of the efforts. Thank you. Now, as we move on, DevOps and microservices architecture can be said to be the offsprings of containerization. Dr. Suresh, if you could please help share your experience on adoption of these agile methodologies in your organization, and what are the key business benefits of adopting these new technologies. Dr. Suresh, please.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thanks for this opportunity with you all today. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. And the question is very, very precise to us. Why? Because prior to COVID, 2017-18, our decision was to do a migration of almost 720 hardware, which is for more than 2 decades of 3 petabyte data, which was a given task to me to make it simple, and we have to get a consolidation part. And we have been forced to do less than 10 infra hardware, and to dismantle all the the kind of servers which we had for years, like which even occupies a space, AC and electricity. That's the way the concern started, and we want to migrate. We have made into two different consoles, where we had one for more to do with the closed source application, another one is for the open source applications, and we are able to reduce almost 750 hardware infrastructure and made it to less than 15 infra, which helped us to cater to the kind of demands for the full financial service sector. And I can say thank to COVID, where it has illuminated and alarmed to the management to find during COVID. We are very much happy to have a seamless operation, where because the kind of infrastructure was made very simple, and try to use the kind of options available during the COVID. And if you see the kind of infrastructure in terms of again operating into multiple expectation set part of the mini services, where again we have to have different people handling different solutions, because the legacy was taken with a huge infrastructure, which was also one of the model which has moved to latest, where even an authentication made simple, and people are able to use it. And keeping the financial service sector, we had enough in terms of month and speed issues, where people continue to say X application is working fine, B application is not working fine, or the kind of business applications are working fine. When it comes to collection, or when it comes to specific bulk processes, they used to push it to the night, month end process, and other things was big task, which was now made it very clear to make it back end. It keeps on happening all the times, and trying to even create that architecture where it is made part of centrally stored with distributed data capture. So you put 1 rupee across the country, it comes and sits in a place where it recognizes and keeps that kind of serverless operation. That's what we can say proudly, and try to utilize more in terms of the kind of business expectations. Any business product person can introduce a new scheme even in the last minute of 2 to 3 days. We had even created a slogan, "Do din mein badle din." Within 2 days, you'll get your application up and running with the kind of expectation set part across the country. And almost 35,000 users during COVID were using the kind of different workloads with the different timings and the kind of expectation set part of the system. And if you see from the architect, since it is more of centrally stored and try to do the distributed data capture, we even along the computing of cloud moved from private public. Now we had something called community cloud, which is nothing but I can just bring in the kind of BFSI competitors together, and the customer will decide which application, which information, which we can make it to keep it, which was very impressive during COVID. And if you see, our operation is more to do with rural, so it's a very few people come in front and try to utilize technology, but the kind of expected dealers, brokers, that entity, intermediate people with the less investment, they are able to use it for a long term in terms of using the community cloud. So it's like a more of an earn to pay model, make the customer to earn so that he can pay for us. So that expectation was a full-fledged, and almost 8 lakh customers as able to utilize those solutions, and they are able to build the business purposes using the community cloud. So it's a stream of expectation set part of it. And again, when it comes to DevOps and the kind of expectation set, especially from financial services, we don't have a full-fledged ERP system because of the kind of local expectation set part of the transactions, and the volumes are very high. The DevOps in terms of supporting the in-house developments, people sitting across either in Hyderabad, Chennai, Bengaluru, but still they are able to use and do the corrections and expectations set part of the federated security. What I'm trying to use it here, federated security, is defined for every unique person, try to monitor, and again using the centrally stored with the distributed data capture, they're able to ensure that developments on time, even though people sit in the different places, as if they are all sitting together in a room trying to do a production, then testing, then ensure that kind of value systems with the kind of logical setters set transparently by the regulators and used to utilize the system part of it. So I can proudly say that 2017-18, the migration project of reducing the unwanted infrastructure has seamlessly created, making use of that COVID as one of the chance given to them. And it's not like we don't have even downtime. We have very less people supporting it and having the architects set part of it, and we are able to utilize even during COVID. And management was very happy. Even they are able to close that accounts on time and they are able to execute things using the technology and ensuring even the part of the kind of balance sheets expectation system was also put part of it, and we are able to do things on time and ensuring everything with the kind of expectation set of the infrastructure and made available for the people with the high expectations to get engaged with them for their business purposes also. So it's a long story, keep going on, but surely it creates enough in terms of for a full sector having diversified business expectations with the kind of financial different regulators. We are able to keep it in a common place, trying to service them, ensuring that timely service for a better usage of technology, and the people can use the share and care model so that the intermediaries like dealers, brokers, agents were able to seamlessly operate their business during the tougher times. Back to Mr. Vijay.
Thanks, Dr. Suresh. I think having handled BFI segment for quite some time, I know the biggest challenge around the legacy systems and how you have used all these containerization, DevOps, microservices to come out of it, as well as consolidate your infrastructure, improve the agility and community cloud performance. A lot of very, very interesting points which came up during this conversation in terms of adoption in your organization. Thanks for sharing the journey with us. Now, as we move to the next one, see the pandemic, as the pandemic has come up in multiple times because it has sort of acted as a catalyst in some of the adoptions within the client organizations. It has not only sort of pushed the customer towards digital transformation, but it also sort of accelerated the adoption of digital transformation. Mr. Ashish, what is your POV on cloud and containerization role in a digital transformation?
Thanks, Vijay, and good morning, everyone. So I think it's a really good question. Let me answer this question in form of a small story. I'll start with a good friend of mine. He's a professor at IIM Lucknow. So I'm also a visiting professor at IIM Lucknow and IIM Rohtak. And then I will talk about consumers, then I'll talk about organizations, and then I'll talk about containerization. So that's a small story I'll talk about. And this conversation I was having with a good friend of mine. He's a professor at IIM Lucknow. His wife is an administrator in a school. And he was telling me how in the 70s, 60s, 70s, a generation meant 10 years, 15 years. When you go from one generation to another, that was usually 10, 15 years. And then in 2000s, things changed. And now a generation is more like 5 years. In another few years, a generation would really mean 3 years to 2 years, which means every 2-3 years, if a child is born, 3 years later, the generation is next one. And the speed with which the generations are changing, that just shows how technology has changed the entire ecosystem, the world that we live in. And I think that brings me to the consumers now. Consumers have changed. Pandemic has changed the consumers. Everybody's become a lot more digital and technology savvy. In fact, the speed of change has never been this fast, and it will never be this slow again. So the change is happening so fast in the entire society, in the organizations, from the consumer behavior standpoint. It's amazing. It is important for organizations to keep up with the consumer. Otherwise, they will become irrelevant, right? We all understand, and as organizations that we work for, we realize that there's an immediate need to be agile. There's a need to have the speed to operate at. And when I look at digital transformation, what is the purpose of digital transformation, right? To me, it really is to pave path for innovative business models. What is the purpose of these innovative business models? To really bring in an ecosystem in an organization that learns, that adapts continuously. It's a continuous reinvention for an organization that's constantly learning and that's constantly adapting to this changing behaviors from consumers. Otherwise, they'll become irrelevant. So how do you make sure that you make your organization adaptable? How do you make sure you make your organization constantly learning? And how do you make sure that you stay relevant? By continuously reinventing yourself using technology and innovation. There comes the value of speed. There comes the value of being able to have that agility and nimbleness in your entire ecosystem. That's where I see cloud empowers that. And a lot of organizations, when they look at modernization, they look at microservices-based digital architectures. To me, it doesn't mean anything unless you have containerization built underneath that layer, because containerization is really what propels all the capabilities we are looking at from portability standpoint, from the experience standpoint, in terms of being able to have that speed and agility. This really comes through containerization working alongside microservices-based architecture. So that's really where I see the impact of containerization in making a digital transformation successful, which of course, post-pandemic has really been picked off, and many organizations are realizing that they cannot, just keep it in the sidelines. It has to become the core of their business strategy. So I hope that answers the question for you, Vijay.
No, definitely. I think clearly explained, clearly articulated. I think agility is a core word. Okay, if I look through all the responses in terms of cloud containerization, what stands out is agility, which is a common thread. Okay, there are multiple other points which got discussed, but from an IBM perspective, I feel that apart from agility, there are few other things which, as a customer, clients have started expecting from the cloud vendors as sort of there is a rapid adoption of cloud on account of the digital transformation. One is, of course, nothing to beat agility, but there are other few factors which are coming up as equally important as well. One is compliance and regulations. Of course, there were two customers here who were part of some of the most regulated industries around healthcare and the financial institution. Now, the expectations have changed in these industries. Earlier, it was performance, stability, security, but now they need much more. They want the cloud vendor to be part of the compliance and regulation journey of the customer. Do you agree?
Definitely, yes. Definitely.
Not just performance. They want to be part of the journey where they want the cloud vendor to come with a reference architecture, all the pre-work with the ISVs who are coming in, so that the customers, when they port their applications onto the regulated cloud, they just need to forget about the platform, security, landscape, the compliance, regulation, and just focus on the agility part of it. Okay. The second one, apart from compliance and regulation, is the evolving of the edge computing. Gone are the days when we used to take our applications, our data to cloud. Now, we want the cloud vendors to bring in their platform, their systems onto your premises or even to the mobile device. And with the adoption of 5G coming in, I think this is going to accelerate it further in terms of edge computing. The third one is what also got spoken in this discussion, which is like, I need to have the flexibility to build somewhere and deploy it anywhere. Build anywhere, deploy it anywhere. The flexibility which comes with it. Of course, containerization gives you that flexibility. Last but not the least, the security. Okay, it's sacrosanct, non-negotiable. They want to see how the cloud vendors can step in ensuring that this becomes an integral part of the offering. Okay, and where does IBM stand in all these things? Because IBM always takes pride in building our innovations, building our patents towards what the customer's critical areas are. So if you look at regulated industry, IBM has come out with something really interesting, first in kind, where we have started developing the regulated clouds. We have already rolled out regulated clouds for financial institutions. We have already rolled out the regulated clouds for telecom. Healthcare could be on the way. So lot of focus happening where we build the reference architecture. We do all the pre-testing with the major ISV so that the compliance and regulation posture is taken care by IBM. Okay. On edge computing, we have an offering called Satellite, which absolutely brings all the PaaS services, which is available within IBM to your data center. Particularly if you want, for whatever security reasons or for latency reasons, you don't want to take it to the cloud, we bring the cloud to your environment. And third, in terms of security, of course, IBM is known for it from the days we started building mainframes. And in today's world, we have something called as FIPS certification of the highest levels available in the industry. And we offer it through confidential computing, multiple of our security hypercare services. But we definitely deliver security. And being a owner of a software portfolio around security, we understand that a bit more than what probably the other ecosystem or market can understand. And finally, on build anywhere, deploy anywhere. In fact, IBM not only speaks on public cloud, but we take pride in calling ourselves as an hybrid cloud company, because we feel there is nothing as a single cloud or a public cloud. It's a combination of all these things: on-prem, public cloud, public clouds, multi-cloud, all these, so that the strategy fits in for your easy deployment and easy rollout everywhere. The objective is not to have a vendor lock-in, but availability of a lot of these systems with sort of openness available. So that's what IBM is striving for. And if you have any other views around this, more than happy to hear too. Otherwise, I can hand it over to Vibhuti. Any views, Mr. Biju, Dr. Suresh, Mr. Ashish?
Thank you very much, Vijay. It was a lot of insights which you gave from IBM. I just have questions like we have Docker and Kubernetes and kind of things. And do IBM have anything of that sort? Which is my question, so that the orchestration will be much more easier.
Okay. We do offer. I will leave Vibhuti to run through it. Of course, containerization is an extremely critical part of our portfolio as well, and we have enough length and breadth of services associated with it. I would request Vibhuti to step in and take this.
Yeah, sure. So, Mr. Biju, that's a very relevant question that you put across. So when it comes to IBM, we have been a regular contributor to Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is an open source project that is part of CNCF, the Cloud Native Foundation that runs Kubernetes, and we have been one of the primary contributors to that in developing that orchestration platform. And of course, our company that we have acquired, Red Hat. With Red Hat, we have built a platform that runs on top of Kubernetes, which we call Red Hat OpenShift. And these two services are available to be consumed as a platform services from our cloud data centers that you can consume. The advantage that it gives is you don't have to spend time on building a Kubernetes environment or building a Red Hat OpenShift environment. These are already pre-built and managed by IBM Cloud, and we handle patches, updates, upgrades, everything. So you just worry about your container and the application that you have built in that particular container and run it anywhere. With and Vijay touched upon satellite. Satellite is a huge part of our cloud services because it makes those cloud services available at a customer chosen site. So that site can be your on-prem data center, it can be a hosting data center that you're hosted on, or it can be AWS Azure, any other public cloud, wherever your infrastructure is running. So it gives you a uniform container platform to build once and run it anywhere, and also extend those cloud services to your own data center as well. One of the example that I can give is, which is very relevant to Mr. Biju, is during this pandemic, when this pandemic started, the wave started first in particular regions of Europe, and that is when a lot of mass testing was happening, and the healthcare agencies were been told to set up remote camps because they don't want a lot of people to come to their hospitals and crowd it for testing. They created remote camps where people can go in there, drive in there, and get their RT-PCR samples and come back instead of going into the hospital and crowding that particular place. So the challenge that brought in is how do you handle so much of amount of data at a remote location where there is no IT infrastructure in place? It's just simple internet connectivity or mobile connectivity that you have, nothing else. No IT infrastructure there in place to handle such a huge amount of data. And when you talk about Europe, it's huge number of people coming to do those mass testing drives, and this is where our Red Hat OpenShift and Satellite came to the picture, where we built a remote edge location for a few months, and that got built within like a couple of days, so that the application can be extended to that particular site with compute and storage available, and then it can collect the data and send it back to the central data center or the cloud data center for processing, and then give that access to the customer. So these are the kind of different use cases that we see getting adopted more and more. In fact, in banking, a lot of use cases that are coming is because cloud is known for making new services available, whether it is analytics or machine learning or AI. Those kind of services readily available in cloud rather than developing in-house. And how do you make those new age cloud services available in your data center without your data moving out of the your premises? So this is where edge computing and satellite comes into the picture, where we make those new age platform services available in your data center rather than you sending those data back to the cloud data center to be processed or to make sense out of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your answer.
Thanks. Any other perspective, any other point of view, Mr. Biju, Dr. Suresh, or Mr. Ashish?
Yeah, I would want to share the business expectations, how we set part of cloud. Again, cloud is an extended version of the information expected part of the current generation. So like on-prem, because we do operate a lot more from the rural. So we do have three-part partitions, especially from the data center part, where we had on-prem cloud, which enables us for the intranet cloud of information flowing for internally to more than 1,700 locations, where they are trying to connect and trying to utilize part of it. The second one is enterprise cloud. That's where the dealers, brokers, agents, and it's more of a public, and it caters to the customer. Again, why customer? Because the touchwood so far the transformation was more on the corporate digital, where keeping the stakeholders and the internal users happy. Now the shift is from the corporate digital towards the customer digital, where every individual customer is treated as corporate. That's where the real transformation has moved and the kind of expectation set. So you expect from the containers, which we said like it's having the microservices getting into the customer level, means you can try to define the kind of expectation set part of it. The third one is high data density server, where it does all the backend process, the kind of expectation set part of the reports using the machine learning, artificial intelligence, and trying to explore. And the kind of the new one, which is the community cloud, which now enables me to compete with the other competition, but it's an existence of existing customer who can decide and define what kind of services he's looking for, and it helps to create an earn to pay model. We'll make him to earn so that he can pay for us. So financial services in a regulated model, adopting the kind of technology services, even the full network is disconnected. Using the technology, they are able to continue to communicate, collaborate, and trying to compute with the businesses on time. That's what it matters. And cloud has proved during COVID and 2020. I can proudly say, including our AGMs and telepresence, were all so seamless and possible because of the kind of expectation set part of the cloud. So it's a great technology which really puts it. It's costly. It's not so cheap. It's costly, but it matters a lot at the end of the day. What has to be driven timely, money, time, efforts is measured, and trying to distribute all the entities who participate, engage, and trying to use the services part of the cloud. Back to Mr. Vijay.
Thank you. I think trade-offs always exist, and I think today the trade-off around the benefits that the cloud gives probably outweighs the cost increase or the cost which gets associated on the adoption. Anything, Mr. Ashish, you want to share with us?
The comment I like to make is that, earlier we talked about organizations expecting their partners, and no matter who that partner is, really they should, I believe, come to the table with their recommendations, with their reference architectures, with their options to provide that kind of a model. Because I think it's really, again, being part of an ecosystem, and organization must ensure that they are leveraging the ecosystem, leveraging the knowledge from providers, from ISVs. And I think that is very important for them to be successful. So I completely agree with you, Vijay, that I think that's something that every organization should depend on.
Thanks, Mr. Ashish. And thanks for all the panelists for sharing your point of view. It was a great time spent with all of you and a lot of interesting thought process, which definitely came out during the conversation. Over to you, Srinivas.
Thanks, Vijay, for moderating this discussion, and it is a very well-organized discussion. And then thanks to the distinguished speakers here today for sharing your thoughts and making this discussion very, very interesting for the organizations that want to take up the digital journey, especially with the containerization and microservices. Each of you had shared several of your experiences, in which I'm going to be, again, summarizing as part of the key takeaways. And then I'll give you a little bit more summary in detail. But at this juncture, for the discussion that we had, I'm very proud to say that, we had hit the nail on the head, and with respect to what an organization can achieve, leveraging this containerization, microservices, and with edge computing, and then the cloud technologies. Thank you again, once again. I appreciate all your time here. You just heard from our distinguished speakers and technology partners on how containerizations and microservices have been helping their organizations and how they were achieving the benefits that they need to from the customer experience. We at Techwave take pride in bringing those customers, communities, and our partners together to thrive together. We have developed containerization and microservices expertise over the time. Just before I get into the details of that, let me give you a little bit overview of who we are and what we do. Techwave was founded in 2004 with an headquarters in Houston, Texas, in North America. We service our customers across the globe in Europe, Australia, India, Middle East, and in North America. We have 500 plus more customers across, and we service them with our 2,000 plus global consultants. Majority of them are in our Global Development Center in India. We offer these services through 3 different line of businesses that we have. The first one is the enterprise business services, where we offer all the ERP and transactional processing services, and then enterprise digital services, where we have all the cloud, data, and apps. We also have engineering services, where we provide services to connect the IoT services along with the field engineering. Today, we are talking about our COEs around the digital, where this containerization and microservices discussion is more apt. The COEs that we have spread across the hyperscalers, IBM Cloud, AWS, Azure, GCP, and along with our SAP. With our digital COE, which comprises of about 600 plus consultants, we help our customers take the digital transformation journey with their cloud, data, and applications. To talk about containerization and microservices specifically, let's take a case study. The case study that I'm going to bring it to you is around is in the healthcare industry. This customer reached out to us about 2 years ago, talking about that how they can transform their on-prem, archaic, legacy-based system to help their patients, the doctors, the communities, state regulators, to pull together into a more usable experience. What we have done that is we use the 12-factor principles, taking the code, taking the user experience, taking the infrastructure, all of that into consideration, and came up with that a digital container platform that could help this customer. As part of that, we have developed containerization, containers and microservices that are around personal care, homemaking, respite service providers, skilled nursing, home care nursing, respiratory health, physical and occupational health, and many more, along with billing and governance. With this, the customer was able to deploy the solution across multiple states, taking into the local requirements and regulatory needs, as well as the scale and with which the intake of the doctors and the nursing facilities in those local regions. Along with that, like they were able to have a unified billing and consolidated system. That is like big plus for them. One thing that I want to bring out like is with this digital data platform, they were able to establish a CI/CD pipeline through DevOps model. When they did that, they were able to do almost 8 to 10 release cycles in a month, where when they started, they were only about to do one a quarter or 6 months. There itself, we have seen that a productivity gain of like more than 25%, not only with that helped to gain the customer confidence as well as the satisfaction of like delivering in time with speed. This is one of the very many use cases and case studies that we have. If you are in this digital journey, I would suggest you to reach out to us for guidance in your roadmap, and maybe we can be a partner of your choice to help you make that a reality. Well, we are at this stage now in the discussion of this topic, and we concluded with our speakers. We talked about who we are, and now let me summarize the key takeaways of the session. Containerization and microservices have become an integral part of our digital transformation today in the modern world. So as you heard from different speakers, I think that is inevitable that every organization in the near future or already been on that journey. So with that said, I wanted to kind of bring it all together for you with our partner IBM offerings, with what we do, and then what you heard from the distinguished speakers. If you really looked at it, the evolution of the cloud technology and services over the past decade has really gone exponential. Specifically in the last 2 years within the pandemic, all organizations have adopted this change, and that change was very rapid. So if you think about it, whether it's B2B customers who are suddenly transformed into B2C customers, your healthcare providers over the pandemic have changed their way of reaching out to the patients because of the COVID, whether it's COVID testing or whether it's patient care or whether it's isolation challenges that they have to deal with. In the same way, when the supply and demand cycles have changed in the economy. For all of that, one thing that you have seen is the common factor in which we have heard from our distinguished speakers as well. The speed has been a major common factor. Along with that, also there are a few others, which is kind of undertone, and then work is the scale and the governance. There's healthcare industry where when they do it at the speed and scale, they still need to have compliance. The resiliency in all of these businesses and organizations have been a huge factor as well. When you talk about all of that, and if you really look at it, if simply possible, is through all this technology solutions like containerization, microservices, DevOps, CI/CD pipeline, and all of that. If you heard our distinguished speaker, Dr. Suresh Shah, in his organization, there was a challenge to reach out into the remote towns and villages, and where they wanted to talk about the microfinancing or other their vehicles and how the finance industry could run. He was able to do that with edge computing and decoupling his services from the infrastructure. So if he had not done that, he would not be able to scale that their services to those devices and then be able to provide those offers and then increase their business growth. So this is one area where you're talking about scale and reach out, right? So that can be only possible if you have a more smaller size, bite-sized applications. That's what he was able to achieve out of that from a containerization microservices. Similarly, if you heard Mr. Biju Velayudan, he provided us the highlights in terms of his organization, what they were able to do. And he's into the healthcare industry with hospitals. When you look at that, he was able to bring in the solutions that he has built in one hospital to be transformed into the other multiple hospitals across the board. And if you know, when they do, hospitals do mergers and acquisitions a lot. And when they are in that process, like each hospital comes with a different infrastructure, different way of doing business and all of that. When you want to combine all of that, it's a huge complex effort. But when you have a digital platform, container platform, like we were talking about earlier, it would make things very easy. And that's exactly what Mr. Biju Velayudan did. He was able to componentize all his solutions and then put it in such a way in the containers and microservices that allowed him to scale to different hospitals without any challenges with respect to the infrastructure of the different hospitals. That's one of the way he was able to unify the entire process and bring the more user experience, which is well received by their patients, the doctors, the hospitals, the colleagues, and everybody in that organization. This is only possible for him, again, through the containerization and microservices platforms that he has been able to do this over the years. Also, we heard from Ashish Chandra, the leader at TCS and a visiting professor at IIM Lucknow, talked about how organizations are changing today, the speed at which they are changing. According to him and the research that he has conducted, the changes are happening within 2 to 3 years. And of course, pandemic has expedited those changes. The innovation at which this change is happening is all based on how they can componentize the services to the customers. That, according to him, can only happen through a digital container platform like Red Hat OpenShift or any others that can help build the containerization and microservices in the mix. And our partner, Vijay from IBM, has talked about how these services can be accomplished through container platforms like Red Hat OpenShift, and then many other cloud native services. Leveraging all of these, you at your organization can make this happen as well. Now, finally, to conclude all of this, if you look at it, like leveraging the platforms like Red Hat OpenShift, the businesses are able to deploy containerization and microservices solutions and help themselves gain 30% productivity, be able to get their deployments faster, multiple releases through DevOps, and 20% more efficient in managing their infrastructure and VMs. And this is what the takeaways that you should be looking into when you are thinking about the journey into this digital transformation. We hope this discussion will give you the confidence and the path that you can take in your organizations to benefit this the same way. Once again, we thank our distinguished speakers and our IBM partner for joining us in this roundtable. We thank all you participants taking time to be part of this discussion. Thank you, and you have a wonderful rest of the day.